Let me tell you something. You can know someone is no longer right for your peace and still find yourself returning to them in your mind. Not because you are weak, not because you have no self-respect, and not because the past was perfect. The mind often stays loyal to what the heart has repeated too many times. It returns to the same memory, the same conversation, the same unfinished feeling, hoping that one more thought might finally make the pain make sense. This is where many people begin to lose themselves. Not only when someone leaves, becomes distant, or stops choosing them, but in what happens afterward. The private replay, the checking, the imagined conversations, the quiet hope that something will change. You keep asking yourself why it happened, what it meant, whether they cared, whether they regret it, whether you mattered as much as they mattered to you. Slowly, without noticing, your attention becomes tied to someone who may no longer be present in your life. You wake up and they are there. You try to focus and they return. You hear a song, visit a place, or touch an old memory, and suddenly your entire nervous system is pulled backward. The world keeps moving, but part of you remains standing in the same emotional room, waiting for an answer that may never come. The painful truth is this: missing someone does not always mean they belong in your future. Sometimes it means your mind has not yet learned how to stop reaching for what once felt familiar. Sometimes your nervous system is attached to the pattern, not the person. And sometimes what you call love is really the mind trying to complete an unfinished story. Ancient wisdom teaches that suffering grows when we give our peace to what we cannot control. Psychology adds another layer. The mind does not simply remember the past, it rehearses it. It strengthens it. It turns it into part of your identity when you keep feeding it with attention. This is how a person becomes more than a person. They become a symbol, a wound, a question, a mirror you keep looking into, hoping to find your worth. But your worth cannot be recovered from someone else's silence. Healing does not mean pretending they never mattered. It does not mean becoming cold, bitter, or emotionally numb. It means learning to stop abandoning yourself in the name of what you miss. It means separating love from attachment, memory from reality, and pain from identity. You can care deeply about someone and still refuse to let their absence become the center of your life. Your life cannot become a shrine to someone who is no longer walking beside you. They may have mattered, they may have changed you, they may have awakened something real within you, but they do not get to define the rest of you. In this episode, we will explore 10 powerful lessons in detachment, emotional discipline, and self-mastery. Lessons that will help you stop thinking about someone in a way that destroys your peace and begin returning to the one person you still have a responsibility to protect. Stop feeding the thought loop. The first thing to understand is that a thought is not powerful simply because it appears. It becomes powerful when you continue giving it attention, emotion, and imagination. A memory can arrive without your permission. You hear a song, pass a familiar place, see a name, wake up in the middle of the night, and suddenly they are there again. Their face, their voice, the last conversation, the version of them you still miss. The version of yourself that existed when they were close. That first moment is not the problem. The problem begins when the mind takes the memory and starts building an entire world around it. You do not simply remember them. You enter the memory, you replay what happened. Then you rewrite it. You imagine what you should have said. You wonder what they are doing now. You picture them regretting it, missing you, or moving on without difficulty. One thought becomes 10 thoughts. And 10 thoughts become an emotional storm that changes your mood, your focus, your energy, and your entire day. This is how attachment survives. Even after distance, the person may no longer be present in your life, but your attention keeps giving them life inside your mind. Attention is not passive, attention is fuel. Whatever you return to repeatedly becomes stronger in the nervous system. The mind learns a path by walking it, and every time you revisit the same memory, that path becomes easier to find again. Modern psychology calls this rumination. Ancient wisdom understood it as being carried away by impressions. A thought appears, and instead of simply observing it, you follow it. You allow it to decide where your mind goes next, pulling you out of the present and back into a story that cannot be changed by thinking harder. This is why so many people feel exhausted after a relationship ends. Even when nothing new has happened, the body is living in the present while the mind is still negotiating with the past. It keeps returning to the same emotional room, searching for a door that may not even exist. The difficult part is that rumination often feels productive. It feels like understanding. It feels like progress. It feels like closure is getting closer. But most of the time you are not solving the pain. You are rehearsing it. You are training your mind to connect their memory with urgency, longing, regret, and fear. There's a difference between reflection and rumination. Reflection teaches you something and returns you to life. Rumination keeps circling the same wound and calls the circle wisdom. Reflection asks, what can I learn? Rumination says, let me suffer this one more time in case suffering reveals the answer. That distinction matters. You are not trying to erase this person from your mind. When someone truly mattered, that is rarely possible. What you are trying to do is stop turning every thought of them into a ritual and stop giving every memory permission to interrupt your peace. The way forward is not to fight the thought aggressively. Fighting often gives it more power. When you say, I must not think about them, the mind hears their name even louder. Resistance can become another form of attachment because your inner life is still revolving around the same person. A calmer approach is stronger. When the thought appears, notice it without obeying it. Quietly remind yourself, this is the loop. Not with panic, not with shame, just recognition. This is the mind reaching for what feels familiar. This is the old story trying to restart. This is not a command, it is only a thought. That small distance is where freedom begins. You may not control the arrival of the memory, but you can control how much life you give it. You can choose not to open the old conversation, not to imagine their side of the story for the 100th time, and not to spend another hour trying to extract meaning from someone's absence. At first, this will feel unnatural because pain can become familiar. The mind often returns to what it knows, even when what it knows hurts. A familiar wound can feel safer than an unfamiliar freedom. At least inside the wound you know who you are, the one waiting, missing, hoping, and explaining. Freedom asks you to become someone else, someone who no longer builds their day around what another person did or did not do. That is why this lesson requires patience. You will not break the loop through one dramatic battle. You break it through small returns. You return to your breath. You return to your work. You return to the room you are standing in. You return to the person you are becoming. Not perfectly, but repeatedly. And every return matters. Every time you refuse to follow the memory all the way down, you weaken the chain a little more. Every time you come back to the present, you remind yourself that home is not the past. Home is not their attention. Home is not the version of the story where they finally understand. Home is your own life waiting for you to live it again. This is not coldness. It is not denial. It is not pretending they meant nothing. It is simply refusing to keep feeding what is feeding on you. One day the thought may still come, but it will no longer take your entire nervous system with it. Their name may pass through your mind without becoming an event. The memory may appear without becoming a place where you disappear. That is real progress, not forgetting, not becoming hard, not proving you never cared. Just learning slowly and with dignity that a thought can visit without becoming your home. Stop checking what keeps reopening the wound. Some pain does not stay alive because the person keeps hurting you. It stays alive because you keep returning to the places where the hurt is waiting. You check their profile, look at old photos, reread messages that once made you feel close to them, and notice whether they are online, whether they posted something, whether they seem happy, or whether someone new is standing beside them. In the moment it feels harmless, just one look, just one check, just one attempt to know. But the nervous system does not experience it as harmless. It experiences it as contact. Even if you never speak to them, checking keeps a thin emotional wire connected between you and them. It gives your mind new material to analyze, new images to interpret, new silences to explain, and new pain to build stories around. You may think you are gathering information, but often you are simply reopening the wound in a quieter form. This is why you can feel fine for hours or even days, and then one small look pulls you right back into the same emotional state. Your body sinks, your thoughts speed up, and your imagination begins working against you. A simple photo becomes evidence. A song becomes a message. A smile becomes betrayal. Silence becomes mystery. You are no longer looking at reality clearly. You are looking through attachment, and attachment is never a neutral observer. It takes the smallest fragment and turns it into an entire story. If they seem happy, the mind says they never cared. If they seem sad, the mind says maybe they miss me. If they are silent, the mind says maybe something is happening. And just like that, the cycle begins again. In every direction, the same thing happens. Your attention leaves your life and enters theirs. That is the real cost. Checking does not only hurt because of what you might find. It hurts because of what it trains you to do. It trains you to measure your peace by someone else's movements. It teaches your mind that their life still deserves surveillance. It keeps you emotionally available to a person you may be trying to heal from. This is where discipline becomes a form of self-respect. Not dramatic discipline, not punishment, not hatred. Just the quiet decision to stop placing your healing in front of triggers and calling it strength. There is nothing noble about keeping every doorway open if those doorways keep leading you back into pain. Sometimes maturity is not proving that you can look and remain unaffected. Sometimes maturity is admitting, this still affects me, so I will protect myself until it no longer controls me. That honesty matters. Many people resist deleting, muting, unfollowing, or removing reminders because it feels too final. It feels like losing the last thread. But ask yourself honestly, is that thread connecting you to love, or is it connecting you to withdrawal? Is it bringing you peace, or is it giving you another reason to think about them for the rest of the day? The answer is usually clear even when it is uncomfortable. Buddhism speaks about craving as the movement of the mind that reaches for relief and creates more suffering. Checking often works exactly like that. You feel the discomfort of not knowing, so you reach for a little contact. For a moment, the mind feels satisfied. Then the emptiness returns even stronger. So you reach again, and each time you reach, the habit becomes more convincing. The problem is not that you care. The problem is that your caring has lost its boundary. You can care about someone and still refuse to monitor them. You can miss someone and still decide not to study their life from a distance. You can have love in your heart and still understand that love is not a reason to keep injuring your peace. This is the point many people miss. Distance is not always rejection. Sometimes distance is medicine. It gives the mind time to stop reacting. It gives the body time to calm down. It gives the heart a chance to remember that life exists beyond one person's name. So make healing practical. Remove what keeps pulling you back. Archive the messages if you are not ready to delete them, but stop rereading them every night. Mute what you keep checking. Avoid asking mutual friends for updates. Do not turn social media into a window where you watch someone else live while your own life waits behind you. This may seem small, but small openings are how the past keeps entering. At first, the urge to check will still come. Let it come. Do not panic. Do not shame yourself. Just pause long enough to see it for what it is. An urge is not an instruction. It is only energy moving through the body. If you do not obey it, it rises, peaks, and begins to fade. That is how control returns. Not by never wanting to look, but by no longer letting the desire decide for you. Every time you refuse to check, you are not losing them again. You are choosing yourself again. You are teaching your mind that your peace matters more than one more piece of information. You are breaking the habit of using pain as a way to feel close. Eventually something changes. Their life stops feeling like a place you need to watch. Their silence stops feeling like a puzzle you need to solve. Their happiness stops feeling like an insult. Their absence stops becoming daily news inside your mind. That is the lesson. Stop checking what keeps reopening the wound, not because the past meant nothing, but because your future needs protection. You cannot keep touching the same sharp edge and wonder why you are still bleeding. Separate reality from the story. Your mind keeps writing. One of the most painful traps of attachment is that the mind does not only remember what happened, it keeps adding meaning to it. There is the event itself, and then there is the story your pain builds around the event. The event may be simple, even if it hurts. They stopped reaching out, they became distant, they chose someone else. They left without explaining enough, or they did not love you in the way you hoped. That is reality. It may be painful, unfair, and disappointing, but it is still reality. The story begins afterward. The story says, maybe I was not enough. It says maybe they never cared. It says maybe I ruined everything. It says maybe if I had been calmer, more attractive, more patient, more interesting, or more successful, they would have stayed. Before you realize it, you are no longer suffering only because someone is gone. You are suffering because your mind has turned their absence into a judgment against your entire self. That is where the wound becomes heavier than the event. Now you are not just missing them. You are using them as evidence. Their silence becomes evidence that you were easy to forget. Their distance becomes evidence that you were not worth choosing. Their coldness becomes evidence that your love was foolish. Their ability to move on becomes evidence that what you felt meant nothing. But pain is not always a reliable narrator. When the mind is hurt, it tries to create certainty. It wants a clean explanation because uncertainty feels unbearable. Sometimes it would rather believe a painful explanation than live with no explanation at all. I was not enough hurts, but at least it feels like an answer. I do not fully know why this happened is harder, because it leaves the heart standing in an unfinished room. This is why you must slow the mind down. Do not let it turn every unknown into a verdict. Do not let it take one person's behavior and use it to define your entire identity. Someone can leave for reasons that have more to do with their limitations than your worth. Someone can be inconsistent because they are confused, immature, afraid, avoidant, selfish, wounded, or simply not capable of loving steadily. None of that automatically means you were unlovable. It simply means the connection did not become what you needed it to become. That difference is not small. It is the difference between grief and self-destruction. Grief says this mattered and it hurts that it ended. Self-destruction says this ended because something is wrong with me. Grief allows you to feel the loss. Self-destruction turns the loss into shame. Shame is dangerous because it does not teach clearly. It makes you desperate. It makes you want to return to the person who hurt you, not always because they are good for you, but because you want them to cancel the story your mind has created. If they come back, maybe I mattered. If they apologize, maybe I was not crazy. If they miss me, maybe I was enough. That is a fragile way to live. Your identity cannot depend on someone else giving you a kinder interpretation of your pain. You have to become strong enough to examine your own thoughts, especially the ones that feel true because they hurt. Modern psychology calls this cognitive fusion. When you become so attached to a thought that you forget it is only a thought. They left becomes I am worthless. They changed becomes I was never important. They stopped choosing me becomes no one will ever choose me. The mind moves from fact to prophecy so quickly that you do not notice the leap, but you can learn to notice it. Instead of saying they left because I was not enough, say they left and my mind is telling me I was not enough. That small change creates space. It does not remove the pain, but it weakens the spell. You are no longer trapped inside the thought, you are looking at it. And once you can look at a thought, you are no longer fully owned by it. This is where emotional discipline becomes quiet and practical. You begin asking better questions. What do I actually know? What am I assuming? What am I adding because I am afraid? What part of this story comes from the present? And what part comes from old wounds I have carried for years? When we do not know the full truth, the mind often fills the empty spaces on its own. If you already fear abandonment, silence can feel like proof that everyone leaves. If you already fear being replaceable, seeing someone move on can feel like proof that you meant nothing. If you already fear not being enough, one person's rejection can feel like the universe confirming your deepest insecurity. But that does not make the story true. It simply means the situation has touched something old inside you. This is why healing requires more than blaming the other person. It also requires noticing what the experience awakened within you. Maybe the pain is not only about losing them. Maybe it is also about the part of you that has always feared being left behind. Maybe it is about the part of you that tries to earn love by giving too much. Maybe it is about the part of you that confuses inconsistency with intensity, because calm, healthy love feels unfamiliar. That kind of honesty is not comfortable, but it is powerful. It stops you from making the other person the entire explanation for your suffering. Yes, they may have hurt you. Yes, they may have been careless. Yes, they may have failed to meet you with maturity. But if you focus only on them, you miss the deeper work. Understanding why your mind turned their behavior into a story about your worth. Once you see the story, you can begin to change your relationship with it. Not by lying to yourself, not by pretending everything was fine, but by becoming more loyal to truth than to pain. The truth might be that you cared deeply for someone who could not meet you fully. It might be that you ignored warning signs because the potential felt more beautiful than the reality. It might be that you made mistakes, but those mistakes do not make you unworthy of love. It might be that the ending hurt so much because you attached your entire sense of future to one person. That is painful to admit, but it gives you your power back. If the story was built by the mind, it can be examined by the mind. If it was strengthened through repetition, it can be weakened through awareness. The next time your thoughts try to turn absence into humiliation, silence into proof, or rejection into identity, pause before believing them. Let the facts remain facts. Let the unknown remain unknown. Do not rush to punish yourself simply because the story feels unfinished. You do not need to explain everything in the cruelest possible way. Sometimes the most mature thing you can say is, "This hurt me, but I will not use it to destroy myself." There is strength in that sentence. It allows you to grieve without collapsing into shame. It allows you to learn without turning yourself into the enemy. It allows you to accept that someone's place in your life may be over without making their departure the definition of who you are. Reality may hurt, but the story your mind writes can hurt even more if you never question it. So separate the two. What happened is one thing, what you decided it means about you is another. Your freedom begins the moment you stop treating your wounded interpretation as absolute truth. Accept that closure may never come from them. One of the hardest things to release is not always the person. Sometimes it is the imagined conversation where they finally understand what they did to you. You picture them becoming honest. You picture them explaining why they changed, why they became distant, why they left, or why they could not love you in the way you needed. You imagine an apology that feels clean enough to end the confusion, a sentence that finally settles the pain, a moment where they look at you and say, in some form, "You were not wrong to feel what you felt," because that imagined moment feels so healing. Part of you begins to believe you cannot move on without it. This is where closure becomes dangerous. Closure itself is not wrong. A mature conversation can bring peace. A sincere apology can soften something in the heart. There are endings that become easier to carry because both people were honest enough to face what happened. But not everyone is capable of that kind of honesty. And if your healing depends on someone else becoming honest, humble, self-aware, or emotionally responsible, then your peace is no longer in your hands. It is in theirs. Ancient wisdom points back to a simple but uncomfortable truth. You do not control what another person is willing to see. You do not control whether they admit their part. You do not control whether they regret losing you. You do not control whether they ever understand the impact they had on your life. Waiting for those answers can keep you emotionally tied to a door that may never open. That is why true closure is not always something you receive. Sometimes it is something you create. It is the decision to stop waiting for an explanation that may never come. It is the decision to stop postponing your healing until someone else gives you permission to begin. It is the understanding that your future cannot remain on hold while you wait for another person to become who you need them to be. There may never be a perfect conversation. There may never be a satisfying explanation. There may never be an apology that matches the depth of your pain. But your life does not have to remain trapped because of that. You can acknowledge what happened. You can honor what you felt. You can learn what the experience came to teach you. And then, little by little, you can continue forward. Closure is not always hearing the words you wanted to hear. Sometimes closure is accepting that the story ended without them. Sometimes closure is choosing peace over certainty. Sometimes closure is realizing that the answer you have been chasing is no longer worth the cost of your peace. You may never control how they remember the story, but you can choose how you carry it. And that choice is where freedom begins. Remember this. The goal was never to forget someone who mattered. The goal was never to erase the memories, deny the love, or pretend the experience meant nothing. The goal was to stop losing yourself in the process. You have spent enough time searching for answers in places that cannot give them. You have spent enough time replaying old conversations, chasing closure, checking for signs, and carrying stories that were never meant to define you. Now it is time to return your attention to the one life you still have the power to shape. Your own. The truth is that healing rarely happens in one dramatic moment. It happens in small decisions made over and over again. The decision not to follow the thought loop. The decision not to reopen the wound. The decision to separate facts from fearful stories. The decision to stop waiting for someone else to provide the